Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Friday, October 24th, 2025. Today is day 749. Before I summarize an update for you of the last 24 hours, I just wanted to call your attention to an article that was just published by some psychiatrists. And the title of the article is called, "Is Anyone Else Struggling with Work-Genocide Balance? Exploring the Psychological and Social Impact of Collective Annihilation in Gaza." And the article talks about how some of us who are working on issues related to Palestine and Gaza, you turn on the faucet and you think about Gaza. You take a shower and you think about Gaza. At meals, when you pray for those who are going without food, you think about Gaza. And I just want to call your attention to that article because what's happening there, for the vast majority of us, we just can't comprehend. But for those of us who are giving witness, it also does affect us. And so being attentive to our mental health needs, our spiritual needs is really significant. So what's happened in the last 24 hours? The World Health Organization yesterday led a medical evacuation of 41 critical patients and 145 companions out of Gaza. And according to the Director General, in a social media post, they said that there are 15,000 more patients in Gaza who are awaiting medical evaluations. 195 bodies have been returned to Gaza by Israeli authorities in exchange for the bodies of 13 Israelis. This is the total over the last 11 days. And the forensic team at Gaza's Nasser Hospital said that it's working with almost no resources to identify bodies and that they are assessing mistreatment and torture. What's happening in Gaza is an international forensic emergency, said a forensic pathologist at the University of Toronto. Based on images of the injured bodies, there is an imperative for complete medical autopsies. It will take about 20 to 30 years to clear the surface of Gaza of unexploded ordnance. And if you're looking at full clearance, that's never going to happen because it's now subterranean, and that experts from the explosive ordnance disposal experts and humanity and inclusion said that we're going to find evidence of the bombing of Gaza for generations to come. More than 53 deaths have been caused by lethal remnants that have been recorded since October 2023. That includes both Israeli soldiers and Palestinians. Now, at no point since the ceasefire has come into effect has the total number of 600 UN trucks been able to enter Gaza on any given day. That's what the agreement specifies. Not one day in the last 2 weeks has that happened. In terms of Israel, they yesterday handed over the bodies of 54 unidentified Palestinians. Most were buried in a gravesite in Deir al-Balah. Forensic experts have been unable to identify roughly 2/3 of the people who've been returned. The Israeli military said the deceased had been combatants, but that had not been independently verified. This is according to the New York Times. Dr. Ahmed Deer, a senior forensic psych specialist at Nasser Hospital, said many of the bodies have signs of traumatic injuries. Israel's Supreme Court pushed back a hearing of a petition filed by the Foreign Press Association demanding independent access for journalists to Gaza. We've been talking about this for the last 2 years. They said the situation's changed and they requested 30 days to examine the circumstances in the Gaza Strip. A bill applying to sovereignty of the state of Israel on the occupied West Bank, in other words, annexing the West Bank, it won preliminary approval. I talked about this yesterday in Israel's Knesset. The vote of 25-24 was out of 120 lawmakers. It's the first of 4 votes required for the law to pass. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said yesterday the U.S. is not supportive of the bill right now. We think it's threatening to the peace deal. Dozens of Israeli settlers attacked Palestinian olive pickers in Termos Aya, north of Ramallah, according to news from Palestinian sources. The Wall and Settlement Resistance Commission says it's documented 158 attacks against olive pickers since the beginning of the season 2 weeks ago. 18-year-old Palestinian Mohammed Ahmed Abu Hanin died of wounds sustained by an Israeli raid in the occupied West Bank in the city of Nablus. In the last 24 hours, an additional 44 Palestinians were arrested. Israeli airstrikes yesterday in Lebanon killed 4 people in the east and in the south. I've mentioned that there are deaths there happening some weeks almost daily. Iranian-backed Houthi rebels yesterday released 12 UN international employees, allowing 3 others to move freely within the UN compound. We've been watching those detentions. More than 50 staffers are still detained by the Houthis. And in terms of international responses, the World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom, I can't pronounce his last name, Ghebreyesus, said the amount of aid entering into Gaza is only a fraction of what is needed. He said the situation is catastrophic. Over 600,000 people are facing severe levels of food insecurity. Now, the ICJ, I talked about this, they yesterday issued an advisory opinion stating that as an occupying power, Israel is obliged to ensure the basic needs of the civilian population in Gaza are met. They talked about how Israel has to accept humanitarian support from UN agencies, including UNRWA. Israel's foreign ministry said on social media that it rejects the court's finding and fully upholds its obligations under international law. If you look at the obligations and if you look at what's happening, that's just not true. The U.S. State Department also responded in an advisory opinion yesterday saying the so-called court issues nakedly politicizing, non-binding advisory opinions, unfairly bashes Israel, and gives UNRWA a free pass. Vice President Vance yesterday said that Prime Minister Netanyahu urged him to give a shot to the ceasefire deal. As I've mentioned in past days, senior Trump administration officials have been in Israel trying to rectify the deal, trying to keep it on track, trying to make sure it doesn't collapse. The implementation of the deal takes monitoring, not in the sense of monitoring a toddler. It's just that it takes a lot of work, so said Vice President Vance. And not only did he tell reporters at Ben Gurion that the annexation bill was very stupid when he was at Ben Gurion Airport, he also said the West Bank is not going to be annexed by Israel. That will continue to be our policy. And if people want to make symbolic votes, they can do that, but we are not happy about it. Secretary of State Rubio is on his way to Israel to begin what looks like a pro wrestling tag teaming match of different wrestlers jumping into the ring to try to grapple with Netanyahu to try to see if the ceasefire deal can hold. So Rubio's on his way to Israel. Vice President Vance just has been there this past week. After President Trump stated he doesn't believe there to be a Palestinian Authority leader, he was questioned on the possible negotiation and release of Marwan Barghouti. This is hugely significant. The prominent Fatah leader was arrested in 2022. He was sentenced to 5 life terms plus 40 years for allegedly directing deadly attacks against Israelis. He's a figure a lot of people believe Palestinians would elect for a president and could help achieve a two-state solution. So we'll be following that story closely. We've met with his wife and family and also support his release. Vice President J.D. Vance said yesterday the task of harming Hamas is going to take some time, and it's going to depend on the composition of the international security force. No great movement in that regard. And U.S. officials are considering a proposal for humanitarian aid distribution to Gaza that would establish 12 to 16 humanitarian hubs, which would be along the line in Gaza to which Israeli forces have withdrawn. This is called the Yellow Line. These would include voluntary reconciliation facilities where combatants would be given the opportunity to give up their weapons in order to receive amnesty. A lot of reports I've read have significant concerns about this plan. Vice President Vance said yesterday before leaving Israel that the vote on annexing the occupied West Bank was weird. He said if it was a political one, it was a stupid one, and I take some insult to it. Finally, I wanted to let you know Iranian Christians are pleased that Mina Kajabi, 61 years old, was released from prison in Iran on October 20th. This was after completing a 2-year prison sentence. She was sentenced for having led a house church. She was arrested at a church meeting along with Iranian Armenian pastor Joseph Shabazzian and several other Christian converts. They were later charged with acting against national security through promoting Zionist Christianity, whether through leadership or membership of a house church. So we celebrate Mina's release. May God go before us and may peace come quickly.